Well, hello and welcome aboard the Profit Express. I am Tim Healy, and I'm inviting you to join me each and every week so together we can win the battle for business. As always, thanks so much for sharing some of your time with me today. And winning the battle for business in normal times is challenging enough, grinding out each and every day. But if you've been trying to win the battle for business for the last 14 to 16 months amid this COVID pandemic, it has a whole new meaning to it. Now, my question for you today is, are you ready as we are entering into the post-pandemic economy? Are you ready? What lessons have you learned? Or are you still using the COVID pandemic as an excuse? So those are some questions I want to pose to you for today's show. And I think we can all agree that few industries have been crushed the way the hospitality, bar, restaurant industry have been crushed. And that is why I have on a special guest today. He is a veteran of the hospitality industry for nearly 40 years. And today's show is not going to be for the faint of heart, I can tell you that much, because my guest is not for the faint of heart. His style is amazing. He is a no-holds-bar, tell it like it is, cold, hard facts and truth and reality, and sometimes he delivers it on a 2x4 when necessary. You will no doubt know him as the star of the hit show Bar Rescue, which is now in its 8th season. They just aired their 200th episode. And I know what Jon Taffer will be sharing with us today not only applies to those in the bar and restaurant and hospitality businesses, but to all entrepreneurs and small business owners out there listening today, because we are ready to get back to business. We need to get back to business. And who better to give you that shot in the arm than none other than Jon Taffer from Bar Rescue. So, Jon, welcome aboard the Profit Express. How are you today, sir?
Good to be here.
Well, first of all, let me say it's 8 seasons, which is a tremendous milestone in reality TV, as you know, 200 episodes. And I was looking back at my notes. You were last here, I think it was your 87th episode. So you're doing something right, Jon. So congratulations to you and the team.
Thank you. You know, making it to 200 is a heck of a milestone. I never thought I'd make it to season 2 or 3. Tell you the truth, I thought I'd do a pilot and go home. So making it this far is obviously very gratifying. It feels like I've been hugged by America.
Well, you certainly have, and you're continuing to be hugged by America. Now, so this is interesting. Anybody who's a fan of the show knows that the very nature of the show, the premise of the show, it's a very emotional show because you have, businesses, bars and restaurants that are on the brink of disaster. So there's a lot of emotion with that, right? But I've heard you say recently that this season 8, has been particularly emotional for you, Jon Taffer. That's interesting. I want to kind of get your perspective on why you feel that way this year.
You know, it's interesting. We look at shows like yours, or this morning I did a Neil Cavuto show on Fox. And as you know, I do a lot of business shows. We talk about business. We talk about numbers. We talk about marketplaces. We talk about frequency and recovery and spending and costs. But how often do we really talk about the humanity of business, the people, how it impacts their lives, the personalities? The pandemic has taught us that businesses have people. And that there's a certain humanity to these industries that is sometimes lost on business shows. You know, we talk about profits, we talk about these things, but the human factor is truly what drives every brand and every business in the end. This season taught me, season 8 of Bar Rescue, after a year of doing news from my home bar in my house. You'll get a kick out of this. I set up my studio during the pandemic. I did 8 billion media impressions from the bar in my house during COVID on every news channel you can imagine, radio, talking about the impact on the industry. Not once for a year did I talk about the impact on the people of the industry until this season of Bar Rescue, and it nailed me between the eyes. The episode, our 200th episode, is a great example. Which was on this. It was a family lost their house 3 days before I arrived, had nothing, was sleeping on top of the restaurant. 4 young boys under 10 years old sleeping above the restaurant on a wooden floor. They couldn't even get their possessions out of their home. You know, another episode, a guy lost his home and ran his credit card bills up to keep paying his employees. Then his employees stole from him after all of that. So employees losing their cars, carpooling to work, people losing their houses, businesses unable to reopen. Business impacts humanity and humanity impacts business. And I've really learned the impact of business on humanity this year. Big time.
So wow. So when COVID hits, you're hunkered down in your home studio. You're doing interviews night and day, 8 billion with a B, billion media impressions. And then once you get into the episodes itself, then you realize the whole humanity element to it. That's there's lessons for all of us in this, Jon. It's amazing. Amazing.
It is. For example, right now we look at the economic environment we're in. We're struggling to get our employees back. So, the restaurant industry is reaching a new stage of even a larger crisis. You see, during the pandemic, I might have been 25% full. But when I sold you a hamburger for $8, I still got to make my $2. Now that hamburger costs me more than I can sell it to you for. So I can't even make the $2 anymore. So the restaurant industry is in a worse place now, post-pandemic, than we were in the middle of the darn thing. So things are not getting better for my industry. It's still getting worse.
One of the things that you talked about that really caught my attention, that's very important, let's call it like a guiding principle for a business, is the importance of trust now and how trust can even supersede, let's say, somebody's loyalty to a restaurant. Talk to us about trust, because I want the listeners to really hear your take on that.
Yeah, brands aren't what they are. Brands are what they do. Logos are wonderful and brand stories are wonderful. But at the end of the day, brands are built upon what they do every day. And it's the activities under the umbrella of a brand that makes that brand. So when we take a look at post-pandemic, years ago, you would go to the best place that had your favorite hamburger. It was reasonably clean. You didn't think twice about it. You ate all the time. I used to go to a pizza place in LA. Always had a C or D on the window. It was the dirtiest place I'd ever been, but I'd still go there and I'd eat the pizza out of the oven on a paper plate because it was that good. So I put away the filth and I ate there anyway. Post-pandemic, you will walk past your favorite burger place because it doesn't look safe to go to your second burger place because it does look safe. That's a huge change to the dynamic of a business. That trust bubbled to the top of product favor, if you will. So when we were in the middle of the pandemic, we were scared to open boxes from Amazon that arrived at our front door.
Yeah, your mail,
Had Amazon put safety stickers and identified that the box was safety, maybe we would have felt better about it. And those things are starting to happen now. But my point is this: you will bypass your favorite brand for your second favorite brand if you trust it more today. And that wasn't the case pre-pandemic to the level that it is now. It's a powerful change in the business. So what do we do with that information? Well, we have to behave differently. We have to provide a visualization of trust to customers that they can see, they can feel, they can touch. So we changed the floor plan of a retail store slightly. So people say, oh, they changed the store. It must be because of the pandemic. They're keeping us safer. Maybe it was just change for the sake of change. We're modifying the fronts. We're creating a safer environment. We're infusing technologies to provide safety. But the most important thing is that humanity of this. People are going to react to trust today more than they ever have before. And that needs to be a large part of any business plan, is building trust. And that's economic trust too, because we're seeing now prices increase. We're seeing retailers be dishonest as far as pricing models and such are concerned. So this trust factor is going to carry through to e-commerce as well.
No doubt. But it's funny, the different factors that people are used to put aside, like the dirty restaurants because it was a great slice of pizza. But now, no, it's much different, much different. Yeah. And they may just be passing by.
Think about this. Think about if you were sitting in a movie theater today and you coughed. Yeah. Everybody's going to look at you like you are the freaking devil, man. They're going to move away from you.
Yes.
And this is post-pandemic. So before the pandemic, you could cough in the theater. Nobody much gave a darn. So, I mean, these are really powerful sociological changes. Are we going to stand right up next to each other online anymore? Or are we going to stand a little farther apart? Am I going to want not a stranger quite breathing on me after this? And it's not about a COVID, the flu, a cold. Who the hell wants those things? So
Right.
there is a sanitation awareness today that is going to continue to live in our society. And we're not going to have 6-foot spacing. I'm not suggesting that. But we're going to see lines spaced a little more. We're going to see people being a little careful. We're going to see trust being much more important in the day-to-day affairs of a business.
Well, that's certainly a great point to remind all the listeners, especially. Now, when you first came on the show, one of the things you had mentioned is one of the common denominators why people make it onto your show is excuses. And they'll blame the president, the economy, et cetera. They don't look in the mirror and blame themselves. Are you seeing, as you've been filming the season so far, and in your business, in your consulting business, are you seeing that restaurants in particular are still using COVID as an excuse?
Oh, it's the greatest excuse of all time.
Right.
Every delivery company, every repair company, every supply company, every restaurant, every retail, no matter where you go, COVID. So so everybody has the COVID excuse. They use it when it's real, and it is sometimes.
It still can be. It still can be. Yep.
And they still use it when it's not. Oh, because of COVID. But did you try? Did you call? Well, did you call? Did you tell? Do you know that you can't get this thing before you call? So, COVID is the ultimate excuse. I learned years ago when I was shooting Bar Rescue, and I don't remember if I told you the story back then, but I'll tell it now. I was in Detroit, Michigan, and I was shooting an episode. And every episode of Bar Rescue, I always ask an owner, why are you failing? And I always get all the multitude of answers. In this particular episode, I looked at this female owner, and she looked at me and said she was failing because of the euro in Greece. This is in Michigan. And yeah, it was somewhat of a Greek community. I get that. But I mean, it was the most absurd excuse I ever had. And it dawned on me at that moment that I had done 100 or so episodes of Bar Rescue. Right. And never once, when I asked people why they were failing, did they ever say, John, I'm failing because of me. I don't know what I'm doing. Or, John, I'm failing because of me. I've made never once did they say that. They always have an excuse. They have some way of offsetting it to someone else. So I said to myself, wow, I found a common denominator of failure. It's an excuse.
Right.
So then I started to dig into it more. And I said, what is an excuse? An excuse is a reconciliation of a mistake. I did something I shouldn't have done. I come up with an excuse. I didn't do something I should have done. I come up with an excuse. I fall short on my budgets, my performance, my goals. I come up with an excuse. Now that night when I go to sleep, it's not my fault. It's the freaking excuse's fault. So I wake up in the morning, not mad at me. I wake up in the morning mad at the excuse. So why the hell should I change? So it goes deeper. So if you buy into the excuse and you reconcile your own failure with some, can I curse?
Yeah, go let it rip. Sure. Absolutely, guys.
So you wake up in the morning reconciling yourself in some bullshit excuse.
Right.
And you go back to work and you still blame them. Let me switch the game for a moment. What if you blamed yourself? And what if you woke up that morning and looked in the mirror and said, I'm failing because of me? Then you would change. You'd have every reason to change. But as long as you pass the blame to that freaking excuse, you have no reason to change. So therefore, an excuse is the obstacle to growth. An excuse is the obstacle to performance. An excuse is the biggest enemy we have as individuals personally and as business people. It stops everything.
In the intro, I said sometimes you deliver your wisdom with a 2x4. I think we got a great example of that, and it's needed. It's absolutely needed. But John, I'm shocked and I'm not shocked. After all the seasons, all the episodes, not one person is saying, John, listen, it's me. Not one of them.
Never one time did anybody look at me and say, I'm failing because of me. Now, I make them say that to me eventually, and that's where the tension of the episodes comes.
Right, yeah,
because if I can't them accept their own failure, I can't move them anywhere. So that's where the tension comes from, is I'm beating them up and beating them up and beating them up until they start to doubt themselves, which is what I need them to do. Right. And when they start to doubt themselves, their brain opens a little crack and I can walk in. And that's when I can really change them.
To get the change,
every business person, every failing business has a failing owner, period. End of discussion. And when I fix a business, I have to start with the owner. if I can't rearrange the owner's processes, where he looks, what he sees, what he listens to, what his priorities are, if I can't do that, I can't help the business. So that's why Bar Rescue always starts so personally. It's my approach. I got to get in his head to understand why he's failing. And then I can understand how the business is failing. I say in jest, many of these people, if I built them the frickin' Taj Mahal, they'd fail if I didn't get in their heads.
And you have such a short period of time to do it, making this, catastrophic change at times. Now, so let's stay with this theme of excuses and obviously COVID. Now, before the pandemic hit, you started to do some research because of the labor shortage on a new a restaurant model that was really involving, as I understand it, obviously a lot of technology, robotics, okay, which has now led to Taffer's Taverns, which is a franchise opportunity. Now, we've all heard, Jon, you've heard it and I've heard it, during all these recessions over the many, many years, some amazing companies have been born in recessions. And I'm sure people say, why, Jon, why would you start a franchise in the middle of a pandemic? But you've proven them wrong. So the first part to the question is, what is going to be the impact of robotics and that kind of technology specifically on the bar restaurant industry? That to me is very fascinating. What was always a very hands-on business. You guys have really done some pretty eye-opening stuff. Talk to us about that, please.
Yeah, we have. When I started Taffer's Tavern, it was during the Trump administration. The economy was strong. Unemployment was ridiculously low. Mm-hmm. So the restaurant industry had a problem. We couldn't find employees. At the same time, we were facing $15 minimum wages, which are really cost prohibitive to some restaurant operations. And the employees that were available were new Americans who often didn't speak English that well. So we had training barriers, et cetera, communications issues. So I said that the traditional casual dining model of 6, 7 guys in the kitchen, that doesn't work anymore. It's just not going to work anymore. So 2.5 years ago, I said, could I create a restaurant with 60% less labor in the kitchen? Could I do it? So could I use robotics and computer technologies and food technologies to do it? Took me a little over a year in test kitchens. Mm-hmm, and then working with unbelievable food technology companies like Middleby, who owns companies like Turbo Chef. Atmosphere TV is another one who provided us with unbelievable video programming. Crown for bar equipment. We created really key partnerships with companies like Atmosphere, Middleby, Crown. Even Big Ass Fans was a huge partner of ours in air movement and sanitation and such. And we put together the kitchen of the future. There's no stove in my kitchen. There's no hood in my kitchen. It's all computerized technology. We can run a 220-seat restaurant packed on a Saturday night with 2 people in the kitchen, and it's calm and it's quiet. But let me go to 50,000 feet if I can for a second. I live in Las Vegas, as you know, and my peers and my friends are presidents of the largest gaming companies in the world. I mean, the guys that have 6, 7 properties in Las Vegas, multi-billion-dollar hotels. They can't get their employees back. And not being able to get your employees back leads you to a process of solutions. So now they're assessing technologies to replace those employees with. Of course they are. They have to. Next, they're looking at every policy and procedure within the building to eliminate the need for employees. They have to. So as a result of this process of employees not coming back to work, a great many of them are going to find that their jobs are gone because we had to make other plans. So the need for technology is being maximized by the employees that are choosing to stay home right now because of enhanced employment benefits. Now, I get it. If we look at, I don't want to make this political, but if 2 people live in a household, and they're each getting an $800 check a week, that's $1,600 a week. That's $83,000 a year that household is being paid to stay home.
Right.
The median household income in America is only $67,000 a year. So they're earning 20% more than the median income staying home. They're not coming back to work because of this. But we still have to open our businesses. So companies like Middleby and Crown and all these technology companies, Shift4 Payments is another one with POS and transactional technologies. They're all telling us I can eliminate 5 employees. I can eliminate 8 employees. So these employees are causing us, or this economic environment is causing us to see the biggest changes in our industry. When you hear the word efficiency, listen to it. It means technology. When you hear the word safety today, it means technology. When you hear the word reduced labor techniques, technology. So the technology companies are stepping up. Look, they're trying to create virtual trade shows. This was an opportunity to steal the trade show business from trade shows and move it to the digital space. So they're trying to do that. They're trying to steal education. The technology companies are trying to create off-premise education so that people don't go back to schools anymore. So if technology has its way, all the trade shows will close, all the retailers would close, and every school in America would close. So we have to fight technology sometimes to keep these institutions in place. So I'm managing that. I'm not going to let technology take over Taffer's Tavern. So what we did, you'll appreciate this, is we infused every technology in the back of the house. It's world-class. There's nothing like it. So we've greatly reduced our costs in the back of the house, but we've greatly improved quality and consistency because machines don't make mistakes. But by doing that, I could put more labor in the front of the house and provide a better connective experience. So you'll find when you go to a Taffer's Tavern, unlike other companies that have to cut labor everywhere, I don't have to cut in the front of the house because we're so efficient in the back of the house. So I think that's why we're building the brand so successfully and we're doing so well, is it's still a great connective restaurant in the front of the house.
So technology is taking care of the back end, and now you're given more dollars to invest in the front end. Obviously, it sounds like to enhance experience, to enhance service, obviously.
Absolutely. And connectivity, which, and we've talked about this in the past, I believe. I own the term reaction management. I don't believe you're doing a podcast right now. I don't believe this is the podcast business. You're in a business of creating reactions.
Yes.
Reactions is your product. The podcast is not your product. The reaction is your product. The podcast is strictly the vehicle.
Right.
If the podcast doesn't create a reaction, there is no podcast. So I understand that in business. Very few people really get that premise. People wake up every day, they think they're doing a radio show. They're not. The cook in the kitchen thinks he's cooking an entree. He's not. He's cooking a reaction. He's achieving it through the entree. The plate of food is not the product. The reaction is. So I'm a nutcase. I'll design that plate 50 times until you react to it. Because I understand Verizon doesn't sell cell phones. They sell reactions.
Right.
That's the business that we're in. And great brands connect. Great brands create reactions when you interface with them. From the moment you connect to the moment you transact to after the transaction. It's those connections that drive success.
John,
and when we did Taffer's Tavern, we wanted to protect the connection by saving the money in the back of the house.
John, you had shared that we're selling connections on our last show together, which I never forgot, John, that we're selling reactions. It's the drink that delivers it, the song, etc. We got like a minute left, John. This is, 2020 COVID, the pandemic has been emotionally and economically draining for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. As you've been in this industry for nearly 40 years, and as you've had a great run, it's continuing with Bar Rescue. Again, congratulations, 8 seasons, over 200 episodes. What is the most impactful thing that's happened with season 8 so far for Jon Taffer?
To understand that in this pandemic world, there's huge opportunity. Think about this. Mm-hmm. If you saved your money during the pandemic and was nimble and really open now with a grand opening push, you could redominate a marketplace.
Right.
I've never seen a greater opportunity for great marketers to bubble to the top, great promoters to bubble to the top, great events to bubble to the top. This is boom town right now. And if there's anything I learned during the pandemic, is that the pandemic was going to end. And when it was going to end, the capacity of many industries like food and beverage would be lower, but the marketplace would be the same, which means boom town. Less capacity, busy marketplace equals boom town. I see today as the greatest opportunity, and I plead to those employees who are not at work right now. If you come back to work, this is the time for you to be noticed. This is the time for you to step up. This is the time to build your future. If you want to start a business, this is the time to do it. If you want to be promoted, this is the time to get noticed in your business. This is not the time to sit on your ass. This is the time to get up and get to it. That's what I learned most during the pandemic. I think we're looking at some of the greatest opportunities of our lifetime the next year, and we got to go out and seize it. So anybody sitting on their ass, stop with the excuses. There are none. Get up and seize it.
John, I'm about ready to run through a wall right now. That's how pumped up you just got me right now. That's fantastic. Listen, I know we're out of time. I want to thank you for sharing, your message and obviously your passion and enthusiasm. Thank you so much for being on board. And again, much success with Bar Rescue in season 8.
Well, I got to put a little plug in here.
Sure, go
One of my
ahead.
dearest friends, one of my dearest friend's daughters works for you, Jenna
Yes.
Rose.
Yes.
Jenna Rose Swerdlow. And I didn't know that when we did this today, but I just saw Jenna, and she's beautiful, and she's my best friend's daughter, and she's incredibly talented.
Absolutely.
And if anybody hasn't listened to Jenna's music, they should Google Jenna Rose and watch some of her videos because she's terrific. And she works for you, and she's a friend of the daughter of one of my dearest friends. It was wonderful to see her today. So I had to give Jenna a plug.
Of course. I'm glad to be able to help you with that. Thank you so much, Jon.
My pleasure. Be well.
You got it. Thank you. And again, that is Jon Taffer on The Profit Express. It's season 8 of Bar Rescue, over 200 episodes. And until next week, remember to follow The Profit Express on Instagram at The Profit Express, on Twitter at Profit_Express. Each and every Wednesday, we're dropping brand new episodes, just like the one we had with Jon Taffer. So listen and download to The Profit Express. Until next time, let's continue to win the battle for business.